Today we talk about the Mahayana Buddhist meditation in the Linji school, Koan, Contemplative, case, Hua Tou, who have done this part. Who have done this part? Who have read this part? Okay. Now, let me see here. Before I go on, what's meant by Koan? What's mean? Remember we talked briefly, right? What's meant by Koan? What's mean? Anyone? Recognize this one? Okay. Koan is mean the public case. Public case, that's the sayings of the purest master, or the teaching of the purest master that passed on the Zen student to uphold what they call the investigative, contemplative questions. For example, the question is before you were born, what was your face?
What was your what?
Before you were born, what were your face? Can you see your face before you were born? That's what we call Koan. I think that was called the provocative of the to intrigue your mind to think. Now, probably you don't understand much. Let me show you short clip too, so that you can see here. You know this one, right?
Yes.
Very famous one, right? Newton apple, right? So you understand what's the law? What's the law that he invented after apple hit in his head? Yeah. Prohibition. Yeah. What happened then? He sat there, apple dropped on his head, and he recognized us. Now I think in all of our lives, there's some doubt, there's some questions that still linger in our mind for a while. But somehow when we saw something, when we met someone and so forth, suddenly we have that kind of movement of, oh, I recognize that. Is that right? Mm-hmm. But you have to keep that doubt, right? You keep that doubt, that question, that lingers in your mind for a while. So those Newton. And that's what they call Koan. I can tell you. What was your face before you was born? Chan, you understand this? What was your face before you were born?
I don't know.
Yeah, actually that's a question. That's one student actually he preached or he lectures the sutras at many temples. So one day he went to see a Zen master and asked him, can you show me how to recognize my Buddha nature? And the Zen master said, ask him that. what was your face before you were born? What happened then?
Left speechless.
He gets stuck, and he went back to search those asked questions in the sutra, in the commentaries. What do you think? Could he find? No. Until one day, actually he gave up after that. After he could not solve that puzzle, he gave up everything. He didn't go out to teach anymore. So he went up to the mountain to do meditations. Of course, you know, in the past when you stay by yourself in the forest, the mountains, so forth, no one support you except yourself. So he plant vegetables and so forth to have self-support. So one day he used, you know, the hole, right, to dig the ground, right, plant the vegetables. But when he get, you know, swim that hole and hit to the rock, and the rock just run away, swim out and somehow. At that moment, he said, "Oh, I recognize that." You know what? If he recognized, maybe you may not know, right? So he went out to talk to the master again. They said, "Master, who asked you before that questions, he recognized us. Why? You don't understand what I'm talking about, right? How come? How come when he dig around and somehow his toe hit with the rock, and he recognized us? And I told you, you have that moment, right, in your life. Some question is linked in your mind so many days, so many months, and so forth. Suddenly something happened. Oh, you say, "Oh, I recognize us." But what did he recognize then?
What I see from it, kind of in the sense that even though you don't see it, it's still beneath the surface. So even though he doesn't see the rocks on the surface, he recognized that, oh, it's there, it's a part of the earth. So maybe in a sense that, like, with his Buddhist nature, even though he might not see it on the surface, it's deep down within him. So I can kind of see the symbology there.
You get closer. Not exactly, but you get closer. Anyone?
Isn't like in Mahayans they believe that everyone is born with Buddha nature?
Yeah, definitely.
Intrinsically.
That is the core principle. That is the core, or we can say the truth, the basic truth of the Mahayana approach. That's different from Theravada's tradition. You have to attend first jhana up to the 8th jhana and so forth to become arhat to get out of the cycle. But in Mahayana tradition, there's no way. You don't need to do that. As once you recognize Buddha nature, you live with that. That's what called that not become Buddha fully, but still you're on the way.
So I guess the rock kind of represents his Buddha nature that was inside of him the whole time, that he just had to find it.
Almost there. Yes.
The rock is still the rock, even though he breaks it.
Rock.
Even though he breaks it, it has a different face, but it's still the rock.
You're
just like
there. A little bit.
Well, if you're born with the Buddha nature, then the unborn child would be the face, I guess you could say.
Yes, 1, 2. But why? That's you answered the right question. But one more part. That hook up to the rock. That connect with the rock. But you say correctly too, but not yet. But she answered the question. Yes, we born with that Buddha nature. But how come? How it relate to the rock? Yes.
Because he had many lives before he was born, so he had many faces before he was born, basically.
Okay,
so
it's
just
close.
like a rock.
Not yet.
Really?
Pretty close. Little bit. So see this kind of question that Koan to let me get you to think about. Think in the way that not using your analytical thinking, but to powder about, to wonder about what's the meaning. One more thing, you answer the right way, and on trip you are almost close a little bit with the rock, a little bit, the last part. last part is the sound. The sound that when he hit his toe to the rock. You understand that? You got that voice now? Remember last time I showed you the before we end the class, right? It's the Sicilian patriarchs when he met the lay person who recite Dhamma Sutra. Remember? Don't activate your mind based on the sound, based on the forms. Activate your mind based on the formless way of life. Make sense? So when you understand that, you understand that. Let's see. Okay, let me give you one example. Let's see someone look at your hat. Okay, that's the form. Now, depend upon their views. They may like it, they may not like it, and so forth. Most of the time, right? Either like or dislike, right? Not the middle. So if they base on your hat and give some comment whether it's like dislike, that's where suffering come from. That's where conflicts come from. That's where what we call the falsehood come from. Make sense? So that's why that sutra, the Dhamma Sutra, say don't base on the form, don't base on the sound, even don't base on the smell to activate your mind. Because when you base on them, what happens? If you activate your mind, most of the time you activate your false mind, your false thought about, oh, I like this, I don't like it, and so forth. That's what we call the false one, because it's up and down rhythm, not this one. Make sense? You got that? So when that monk he used his hoe and spit up the rock, he heard the sound of the rock. At that moment, he recognized us. The sound. He did not based on the sound, but he recognized his unborn nature there. Without analyzing, without Guruism and so forth. Make sense? So that's why later on, Linji, we talk today. Linji, he uses technique. Sometimes, he shout or he yell to his student. And of course, for us, it's to do it, but still, that's his technique. So some monks they use strong ways to awake the student. Like let's say while I'm standing to talk, some you fall asleep and say something, and wake you up. Make sense? So depend upon the teacher. So he uses techniques that he uses the technique of telling to students to wake them up, to awaken them. But in this case, for the monk, yes, he didn't base upon the sound, but he recognized the sound without analyzing good or bad. Or you can say too, this is similar in the way that, oh yeah, you can say, you can recognize the rock hit the rock. Probably that's the way, but in the most commentaries about that story, they say they recognize the what we call hearing nature. What's mean hearing nature? Hearing nature, let's go beyond discriminations, go beyond analytical thinking. So that's especially in one particular sutra, what we call Sugar Gamma Sutra. Remember last year you wrote that one, right? In this sutra, the Buddha said that we have what we call hearing nature. Hearing nature. Hearing nature. Or seeing nature. And so forth within ourselves. So let me tell you one more thing before I come back to the question. So in this sutra, the Buddha gave one example of the hearing nature. He asked one monk to strike the bell, like strike this bell, right? And he asked second monk that, did you hear the bell? Did you hear the sound of the bell? Of course, yes, we say yes, right? And for a while, for what we last, after 1 minute, a couple of minutes, and we would ask the second monk, did you still hear the sound? Do you still hear the sound of the bell? Like hit from here. Okay, while I'm hitting, right? Or after I hit the bell, you can hear the bell, right? You can hear the sound of the bell, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you still hear the sound of the bell?
Yeah.
Now? Can you still hear the sound of the bell? No. Any one of you?
It's kind of like that weird feeling where it's like very familiar, and like you can still kind of hear it, kind of like in the back of your ear.
Not the back, yeah.
But it's like, you know what I'm saying? Like it's still.
Okay.
Like if you think
The
about
rain.
it,
Yeah, if you think about it, you could.
it's like a
Okay.
Phantom hearing.
Okay. But up to now, can you still hear the sound of the bell?
Yeah.
You sure?
If you think about it,
You think about that?
you can
Okay,
remember
yes.
the sound of it.
So, yeah, so that's why he asked the first monk to hit the bell again, like hit the bell again. And he asked the second monk, you hear the sound of the bell? Yes, definitely, like you, right? He said, yes, I hear the sound of the bell. The sound of the bell. Now, later on a little bit, can you still hear the sound of the bell?
No.
No, definitely. But would I say you're wrong? Why? Why you're wrong? Why? What happened? Remember, the trick is this. You don't need to wait for me to hit the bell to hear the sound. You have the ability to hear the sound. Is it right? Whether the sound of the bell, whether it's the sound of the lectures or the professors next out our rooms, or the sound of the cars or whichever, you still have that kind of nature. You still have that kind of ability. You don't need to wait for me to talk so that you can hear my voice. You don't need to wait for me to hit the bell to hear that sound. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
You understand that? That's what we call hearing nature there. The hearing nature, that's beyond the sound. Any particular sound. Make sense? How about we talk about someone who was blind? Can they see? Can they see? They can see. Yes, we talked before. They can see not with their flesh eye, but they can see a few with their can, with their touching. Make sense? And they're more sensitive than us. Is that right? Because like in Buddhist view, the eyes, ears, and nose, the tongue is like the window or the doors of the house. When one door is broken, we focus on other door, other windows. So again, you hear the nature whole way there with you. Make sense? You don't wait for people to talk. Don't wait for people to hit the sound and so forth. That's why when he hit this rock, he recognized his pure nature there. Or Buddha nature there. That's pure nature there. That go beyond this physical body. That's why the monk say, ask him. His master asked him, what was your face before you were born? That's the face. That's the hero nature there. Makes sense? It's clear now? So when you have this kind of understanding and read the Zen story, it's feel funny. But for other people, they have no clues. Only the people that have that kind of knowledge, especially that kind of experience, recognize us. And again, it's like Newton. He just wait for the last minute, right? I'm not waiting for, but somehow because of that kind of accident or coincidence happening, so he recognized us. Like that aha moment. Okay, and let me show one more thing. It's similar.
In which we are perplexed. Those moments in which you begin to wonder and question. These moments have happened throughout history and have led to some truly amazing discoveries. Take this story, for example. There once was a fellow named Archimedes, who was born in 287 BC in the city of Syracuse in Sicily. He was a Greek mathematician, physicist, engineer, inventor, and astronomer. One day, Archimedes was summoned by the king of Sicily to investigate if he had been cheated by a goldsmith. The king said he had given a goldsmith the exact amount of gold needed to make a crown. However, when the crown was ready, the king suspected that the goldsmith cheated and slipped some silver into the crown, keeping some of the gold for himself. The king asked Archimedes to solve the problem, but there was a catch. He couldn't do any damage to the crown. One day, while taking his bath, Archimedes noticed that the water level in the bathtub rose and overflowed as he immersed himself into the tub. He suddenly realized that how much water was displaced depended on how much of his body was immersed. This discovery excited him so much that he jumped out of the tub and ran through the streets naked, shouting, "Eureka!" which comes from the ancient Greek meaning, "I found it." What did
Similar, right? I found it. I recognize this kind of question linger in his mind so many days and so forth. So again, that's the movement. That's why Koan in Zen tradition is so important. Right. Okay. So let me get back to.
I want to see how it ended.
Can we finish
Watch
it?
how it ended.
I want to know how he figured it out.
Oh, okay. Did he find?
Well, he found a way to solve the king's problem. You see, Archimedes needed to check the crown's density to see if it was the same as the density of pure gold. Density is a measure of an object's mass divided by its volume. Pure gold is very dense, while silver is less dense. So if there was silver in the crown, it would be less dense than if it were made of pure gold. But no matter what it was made of, the crown would be the same shape, which means the same volume. So if Archimedes could measure the mass of the crown first and then measure its volume, he could find out how dense it was. But it is not easy to measure a crown's volume. It has an irregular shape that's different from a simple box or ball. You can't measure its size and multiply it like you might for other shapes. The solution, Archimedes realized, was to give the crown a bath. By placing it in water and seeing how much water was displaced, he could measure the volume. Then he'd calculate the density of the crown. If the crown was less dense than pure gold, then the goldsmith most definitely cheated the king. When Archimedes went back to the king and did his test, the story says, he found that the goldsmith had indeed cheated the king and slipped some silver in. These days, using the way an object displaces water to measure volume is called Archimedes' principle. The next time you take a bath, you can see Archimedes' principle in action.
Okay. Anyway, so this is the whole story. Okay, so you see that, guys, is that reason why in Zen traditions is quite different from the Vipassana traditions, that you have to count your breath, that you have to rely upon, remember 40 objects, right? The kashish, nam, and so forth. But here you rely upon only Koan. Alright, so some of you came late. Please remember November 5th celebrations optional. November 9th we don't have class. And November 18th, right? The one read that November 18th practical. Alright, so let me go back and review with you one more time so that you can see step by step, logically, how Zen tradition developed in China. They may be different from the Vipassana, the Theravada tradition, but in a sense, it's still the same. Like why we drive cars, right? Unless you stay in the campus, you stay in the dorm, you work here. But if you stay even couple miles from here, you need to drive. You can work here, right? You stay a couple miles
I'd
from
say
here.
like literally 5 minutes away from school.
In work.
Driving.
Oh yeah. So I mean, everyone of us need to drive here. We go to school, we go to teach, but we use different cars. Not cars, we don't have similar cars, or exact same cars. So those the practice of meditations. So the cars is the means for us to come here, the means for communicate for transportations, not the goal. The goal is to come here, to come and plan for. Alright, so let me go over one more time. So historical aspect of Zen tradition, so that can have the broad idea, a general idea. So have a long unbroken traditions handed down by a succession of patriarchs, from first to the 28 in India, right? And from the first to the 6th, and recognized the universal Buddhahood. Remember, Buddhahood, Buddha nature, hidden nature, sin nature. In a sense, as this body, through the eyes, we see the sight, through the ears, we can hear the sound. So through our sense, we recognize sense around us. But in general, that's what we call Buddha nature. Buddha nature, or good nature, or awakened nature within ourselves. So through our eyes, we have seen nature. Through our ears, we say we have hear nature. Hear nature or see nature is always there with us. This is not, it would not come and go like our thought. And later on in the Zen tradition, even in that sutra, the Buddha said that too. The thought, they pop up and down, right? Anxiety or excitement or sadness and so forth. They like the guests at the hotel. They come and go. Was that right? They come and go. They would not last long. They would not stay there forever. But your nature is there with you all the times. That's what that Koan is about. Right? The original phrase, our original phrase before we were born. That's our nature here. It's always stay the same. So our peacefulness there, our calmness, always there with us. But only because of the fluctuation of whichever things happening. So that's why we have this kind of up and down emotions. The only thing is to recognize this, that's all. You need to do anything to recognize us, to recognize that nature, that's all. Don't play around with the false thought up and down. And it's similar in the past now, with a different approach and in different ways to recognize us. So that's one. Advocate the direct apprehension of Buddha nature that exists in the mind of each individual. Even the dog, the cat, or handicapped animals, right? They still have that kind of nature. Even we say that the dog has sixth sense, right? They could sense earthquake or something that we could not sense. Or even the pigs, they could sense. They have strong sense than us too. So it's not limited to human. So again, this is talk about father. And the second passion I told you, the flower shaman last time, when he hold the flowers and he recognized that, and after that he passed the rope and bow. In Buddhism, the rope and bow represent the religious or the spiritual authorities, not in the sense that they want to control, but what we call last time, mind to mind seal. Mind to mind. The seal, the seal you.
Like a bond.
Yeah. The seal all got that. That is the recognition that everyone has that one too. Okay, and yes, that what about the flower shaman, and this 28 parts of just Bodhidharma I told you last time, right? So he went to China, and the emperor could not understand what he just said, right? He stayed proud that he did all kinds of things. He had monks build temple and so forth, and asked him whether he has merit. His monk said no. No, in the sense that he could not recognize his Buddha nature, but he still had the blessing to have people, but he's still in revolt in that kind of samsara. And he went to Shaolin temple to sit for 9 years, and you know the story like last time. And here, he based upon what we call a separate teaching outside the doctrine. No dependence on establishment of letters, transmission of the Dharma directly from master mind to mind seal, mind to mind transmission. Seeing one inherent with Buddha nature and attain Buddhahood. That's the difference, right? On the Theravada traditions, especially from Vipassana, you need to practice. You need to go step by step. But here, you just see, true. I recognize this, that's all. But later on, yes, some monks recognize, and even you understand, even you recognize that kind of awareness, that kind of Buddha nature, awakened nature, but still, you have all kind of what we call habitual patterns to cover your mind. Right? So, like our daily life, yes, like I told you, right? We have that kind of nature, either nature, that before, after hitting the belt, you still have that kind of hidden natures. Make sense? But still, we play around with our thoughts. That's why in this sense, that Bodhidharma, he came to China in let's see, in the 6th century, and at that time, Buddhism spread to China and it's become popular. And many monks, they study about Buddhist philosophy profoundly. They actually made them were Buddhist scholar, for example. They just study about Buddhist text of the soul. And of course, some of them they did meditation too. That's why when Bodhidharma he went to China, he saw they attached, the sort of scholar, right? They attached too much word by word, sentence by sentence. That too much that they could not recognize the real teaching of Buddha. That's why he said, based upon separate outside the doctrine, but I'm not outside. Just tell you the truth. That's the Buddha nature. It's all the teaching the Buddha have provided, right? The goal is to attain the Buddhahood, to recognize that kind of Buddha nature. That's all. Whether this sutra and that sutra, but that's the ultimate goal. But he saw that many monks, many of them were scholars, so they can attach with the text. No dependence on establishment of letters, the same. Transmission of Dharma directly from mind to mind. You understand, right? So, like if you recognize something, and later on, like the story I told you, the master told the student that you need to recognize your face before you were born. And after he heard the sound of the splitting rock, he recognized us. That's why he told his master, I recognize us. Okay? And see, again, that's important. The inherent Buddha nature in every one of us. And actually, last weekend when I went to New Jersey, this one man, he got out of the Navy, and somehow he inquired to be a Buddhist monk. And I told him that's great too. And of course I gave him some kind of advice. Even after a month he could go back to school to get the degree. I mean that the degree is to teach. But I told him that it's better to practice first. It's better to have experience about your nature or about meditation. That you have the skill or ability to transform your mind before you become a Buddhist scholar. Because this is my own experience. The first ever lecture I talked to a group of college students in Indiana. I forgot, this was many years, more than 10 years ago. So one professor invited me to come to her class, and at that time she talked about the Hua Sutra. And I think some of you probably recognize that. You recognize Hua Sutra? In Hua Sutra I say, forms is emptiness, emptiness is form, and so forth. You understand? Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Forms, emptiness. Form is emptiness and emptiness is form. What does it mean? Who knows what it means? What does it mean?
Is it like emptiness of the mind or physical emptiness?
It's up to you, whichever way you you see.
Well, in one sense, you can't have form without emptiness. You know, kind of like negative space. If you have a form, there's going to be that negative space around it.
Okay.
But there's also the sense of not wanting to become attached to forms, because it does create a sense of emptiness.
Anyone? Once we form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Anyone have idea?
I've heard of something like this before, but I really don't.
How you know? Okay. Let me give you one example. This school, how long has it been existed here? How long has it been established here?
1927.
1927.
Something.
About in the 1800s. You got my point now.
That you need emptiness before you form.
Let's say you got that. What's that?
You have to start from somewhere, and it's
Like
usually
you have
empty
to have
first.
nothing to give into something.
Yeah. You see, before let's say before the 19th century, right? Here's still the land. Is that right? Now it become a school. This school lasts forever? No way. Probably you can say 1,000, even 10,000. It has some time frame there, right? But again, one day it won't be here anymore. You see that? And people build some building from empty space. I mean the empty land. That means form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. That's what's about. You see that? So on that day, that professor explained to the student about this term. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form in a lofty way, in the profound ways. But when they saw the eyes, the action of the student, I recognize that they may not understand much. So understand until I explain to them in reality. You understand that? So that's just why things come. It come because the condition and will be resolved because condition too. Right. So that's nothing lasts forever. So again, that is the recognitions. Without my explanation, you may not understand much.
Exactly.
But later on, you recognize throughout times. All right. So again, the mind-to-mind transmission, it was conducted this dialogue with provoking, sometimes illogical. Remember the question? Illogical, but only for you. And also sometimes it's conflict, right? Paradoxical, and oftentimes sometimes violence. The master yell to the student. Actually, there's another one. It's very interesting. This is in the real setting in a monastery. So there's two groups of monks. Let's say here, there's one group of monks in this building, this A building. Another group of monks is in the B building. So one cat run back and forth between these two buildings. And of course, the monks in this A building, the monk in this and that B building try to keep the cat. And so when the Zen master came back, and he saw that they were fighting about the cat. What happened? He was the teacher. What should you do?
Split the cat in half.
Wow, that's why.
Yeah, it's a biblical story too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yes, of course. As a monk, we're not supposed to kill the cat, but he did. He did. Actually, before he did that, he asked this two group of monks, a group of monks too, by B and A and D. If you say correctly, I will let the cat go. Otherwise, I have to spit it out. But no one can answer that. So the master is so violent, or he's so rude, or what do you think?
Being fair.
He's so mean.
No.
Ask, yeah, why?
Because I guess the monks who said spare the cat, the other monastery can have. There's one who truly loves the cat. So.
Because of attachment. And so when his close disciple came back from the field and knew the story, what happened? We wear the shoe, right? He took out one of his shoes and put the shoe on his head and walk away. And so the master said, well, wow, if you were here before, you would save the cats. That's illogical. What happened? What did he do? Why did the master say that if you were there, if you were here before, we could save the cat? But it's too late now. So why the Zen master say that? When his close disciple put one of his shoes on his head and walk away. Why? Why? If you understand the meaning of that, it's the spirit. Of course, for outsiders, they don't know what he's talking about, right? But this is real meaning there. Why? When he put his shoe on his head, the close disciple put his shoe on his head and walked away, the master said, if he were there, he would save the cat. Why? Any clue? No? It's similar story that I just told you about the Koan. That is one of the interesting Koan too. Right. So from time to time, you encounter this type of Zen story, but if you understand this, it's really funny and this has deeper meaning. Otherwise, it's nonsense. It is illogical. Why? Why is that? Now here, probably it's not easy, and easy for you to understand. You know why? Because monks of building A, monks of building B, they try to find for the cat, right? Up and down. Is that right? They try to find for the cat. That's why they have their emotion, right? Up and down. And as a master in the monastery, in the past, probably 1,000 monks live together. So as a master, whenever he say he need to do it, he cannot say, oh, I'm sorry, actually he need to keep his promise. He need to do things that he said. So, but when his close disciple came back and put the shoe on his top, the shoe is the dirtiest one, right? And on his top, right, on his head, this go and remember this. This your head is your shoe. Recognize what it means now. Go beyond what? The purity and dirtiness. That's the Buddha nature here. Make sense? That's why his master, oh, if you were here, you would save the cat. Because for these two Buddhist monks, they fought for the cats. But that's why they have that kind of emotional problems. But for his close disciple, I could recognize my pure nature. I don't need to attach to the cat much. You see that?
Yeah.
So that's why it's provoking your thought. Why? Actually, from later on, I probably you need to think.
I'm gonna go meditate in a class.
Actually, one of my students, when they first came here, I told him and the group of young students about that story too. And up to now, they don't know how to solve it yet. Yeah. Okay. So if not thinking, but if you recognize, right, in Vipassana too, you need to go beyond, right? You need to cool down that way, this wavelength. Remember that if we have so much anxiety, this is our wavelength, right? Our wavelength. And if we are peaceful, right, our wavelength is more longer, right, and so forth. And if we have a calm mind, it may be longer. And so this is the part of our nature here in Zen edition there. So there's a lot of interesting story again. Okay, so that is what about. Remember last time we watched, we moved that his student cut off one of his arm to show his sincerity. For you, it's somehow it's so strange. But in the East, especially in the Buddhist tradition, it's common to show dedication about the practice. And this is one here. It's Hui Ka. He cut off his hand to show his sincerity. And the next one is the third patriarch, and up to the four, and the fifth one have transmit my seal to Hui Nan. Hui Nan, remember, he was an uneducated person, and he was layman. He was, remember I told you, he was layman. He cut the wood to sustain his living. But later on, he was suggested to see the master. And when he went there, he worked in the monastery. And one day, it's very important poems. One day, the fifth Zen master told everyone, you need to write a verse or poems so that I can transmit the rope and bowl. Remember I told you, rope and bowl represent the spiritual authorities to recognize that you will be the next patriarch. So in the assembly, this is the leader monks. He the body is like the body tree. The mind is like a bright mirror stand. At all time, we must try to polish it and must not let the dust collect. You understand that? It's like our mind. He used this kind of verse to explain that, okay, the body is like body is mean enlightenment, and the mind is like the bright mirror. So every day, like you have to clean up, you have to clean with your mind. All the time we must try to polish it. Like we have all kind of dust in our mind, all kind of worriness in our mind. We need to clean them up. It's like in Vipassana vision. We need to calm down our mind. Make sense? So that don't let the dust cover our mind. Don't let the emotion cover our mind. So that's proper, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's common sense. That's why we start do meditation. That's why we have right mindfulness, right concentration. But for this layman, this say different way. Body original has no tree. The bright mirror also has no stand. Fundamentally, this is not a single thing where could dust arise. You can understand this? Understand this? Why is opposite to the first poems? Body original has no tree.
Just the concept of like, I feel like it has to do with something like a concept of like attachment. Right? It doesn't have something.
Yeah, there. Mm-hmm.
Because you are not what you are.
Yeah, you are not, because he answers, what is it, Bodhidharma also said like there's no merit and there's no nothing, so there's no attachment to anything, there's no need to.
That's it, your
Buddha nature.
Buddha nature. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Can you see your Buddha nature?
No.
Can you? No forms.
There's no form.
No forms, right? No sound and so forth, right? That's why in the Dhamma, I told you that in the Dhamma Sutra, they say that don't rely upon the sound, don't rely upon the form to activate your mind, rely upon the formless things to activate your mind. That means you cannot rely on things that you could see, could hear. Otherwise, they trick your mind. Is that right? You know how the magicians trick your mind, right? And so don't rely upon that. So that's why. And he said, in general, our Buddha nature is there. There's no mirror. There's no stand. It's there. It's already there with us all the times. That's why this fifth Zen master transmit the road and bowl to him, because he recognized the true nature there. But of course, for the first, for the leaders, the monk who wrote this, said, yeah, that makes sense too. You need to do step by step. So that's why later on, in the Zen tradition, in Chinese Zen tradition, they split out what they call the two traditions. One is graduate, and another one is sudden. Graduate enlightenment and sudden enlightenment. Rather than sudden enlightenment, that's when you need to do step by step, to meditate, to calm your mind so that the mind more clear. Through meditation, through concentration and mindfulness and so forth. But for the sudden enlightenment, you recognize us on the spot. You understand that? That's why they split out. It's so important concept that. So the whole thing, and here, his name him as his successor, and his body is still intact in China for 1,000 years. His flesh body, not with the mummy, right? His flesh body is still there in China, right here. That's right there. And later on, one of his students, Shen Hui, he attacked the Shen Shu. Shen Shu, that's the one who wrote the first verse, right?
He was hurt. He was mad.
Because he's not the real one yet. Yes, but for him, after he received the robe and bowl, or he received the spiritual authorities of Mother Mercy from the fifth patriarch when he was an layman. That's long yet. But he need to stay with the hunters for 16 years before he went out to teach. So after that, this is a long story. So later on, one of his students, Chris, the one who followed what we call graduate and enlightenment path to advocate this. Anyway, so again,
wait, did you go back?
What's that?
Monk certificate thing.
I've seen a lot of people actually try to sell those still.
Which one?
Those monk
This one?
certificates? Yeah, like
Yeah, it's happened in the past.
There's still some today.
Not now,
Right.
but still, is this something? Yeah, this is one of the problem. But it's less now, but still, it still happen, especially in China and Vietnam. They don't share, but somehow there's some you can say fake monk too. They go out to beg for food, but in the morning most of the times.
I saw some in New York.
Oh really? So if you understand Buddhism well, so you recognize
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Okay. So let me review one more thing. Okay. So what is this? Then beyond definition and logic, sometimes it's illogical. There's so many stories. Stresses direct experience and being in the moment instead of based on the books, based attached to the past and future. It's similar to the Vipassana, right? Here and now. So the essence is the same, but the approaches are different. That's all. Right? Concept Zen meditation, we know that. So the Chinese word is Chan, Japanese is Zen, focus on the experience of enlightenment. Reject devotion to Buddhas and Bodhisattva, those practice and seek to clear mind. Let me tell you this one, one story. So when most you came to my temple, right? You saw many Buddha statues and so forth, right? That's our devotion. This is common sense in other traditions. There's one Zen monk. One day, he passed by a monastery. Remember, in the past, somehow is the what do you call the hidden or the spoken rules. They didn't write out, but there's a spoken rule and hidden rules that monks can stay in any monastery for free, any monastery overnight for free most of the times. So there's one monk. One guest monk, somehow one night he stopped by the monastery. It's too cold for him, and he looked on the altars. He saw a wooden Buddha statue. He brought down and burned that Buddha statue. Of course, in Buddhism, it's still a serious matter if you burn or break Buddha statue. So the abbot, he came out and saw, and he's so surprised. That's this, and he asked, "You are a monk, how could you burn my Buddha statue?" This is so disrespectful in Buddhist view. Or damage or burn the Buddha and so forth. So this gentleman, he said, "Wow, I'm too cold. I need to burn the Buddha. I need to burn this Buddha statue for getting what you call relics. Remember we told you about relics, Buddha relics? That's mean his remainder, right? So the abbot said, how could you get the Buddha relic out of this wooden statue? You understand that? It's just wood. How could you get the real relic, the real Buddha relic? And so this the guest monk, he said, well, if that's the case, I would like to bring another one down to burn. You understand that? Another time, the abbot suddenly he recognized what the Zen monk talked about. You understand that? You follow the story? You follow the story?
I don't understand at the ending. Can you repeat it one more time? He told him, why did you burn it? And he said because he was cold.
And get the Buddha relics. And of course, the abbot say, "Wow, how could you get the Buddha relic, real relic, for this wooden statue?" So this is the guest monk or the Zen monk say, "If that's the case, I would like to take another, wooden statue to burn." You understand that?
There's no.
So at that moment, the abbot of that monastery recognized on the spot. He was awakened on the spot.
It's kind of like how people say like Buddha doesn't have like Buddhism isn't really big into like statue figures anyways. So it's kind of like to him it's just like there's no attachment or no face to the Buddha. So he just uses
That's the point.
utility over attachment to the belief.
The
That's
meaning in the statue is what meaning you give it, so I mean, it's just wood.
Yeah.
If you're using it as wood, it's just wood.
But of course, only for enlightened monk could recognize us. But for common people, there's no way for them to do that. Of course, we always remind the lay people not to break any Buddha statue. This is one of this more disrespectful way. But still, for this Zen monk, he did in the illogical way to awake that happened. That he's so attached to the Buddha statue, right? You understand that? So that's the way. Yeah, he warmed up his body with the wooden statue, and in meantime to help the abbot not to attach to that statue much. So that is what the story. Or reject devotion to the Buddhas and Bodhisattva. And another story too is related to one of the famous Zen master. He used to sit on the rock for days. They sit in meditation on the rock for days. So one day his master went out and saw that. He didn't say anything. So that day he came out. He used to rock, right? What do you call? He used one rock to what do you call?
Spark a fire?
Oh, to rock another rocks. And so his student look at him and say that, what do you do? And the master say, well, I want to rub the rocks so that I can make it as a mirror. It's logical. Can you make a rock? Can you rub the rock until it becomes a mirror?
Yeah, rub it smooth enough.
A mirror?
Like
It
a
becomes
painting?
reflective.
Like a painting, like the mural painting?
Mural or mirror?
Mirror. Sorry.
Oh, mirror.
Okay. Can you, from a rock, this is our rock out there. Can you?
No.
No. So what happened then? And as the master said, well, if you sit there, you could not attain enlightenment. You understand that? So in the Zen tradition, it's just like when you do, I read some of your writing too, right? Sitting alone is not necessary for you to recognize the pure nature. You can do the sitting, you can do the standing, walking, and so forth. Any moment of our life, we can recognize our nature, not attached to the sitting style. And of course, this has become one of the Koan too. Actually, there's many stories. There's like, again, it will tell you. Alright, so the church, okay, extra uniqueness to this idea of extra-territorial transmission from mind to mind. Outside, you see the text. So most of the time, you see that the master just gives some illogical sense, illogical Koan or illogical sentence. That's come from nowhere. They didn't quote directly from the text, from the Buddha teachings. That's what we call outside received text. But they talk about, they get that kind of illogical sentence through their own experience. That's quite different. Not because they like to, because of nothing, because they don't know much. Or you see methods use provocative and sometimes violent language to inspire this disciple. Again, really comprehend scripture gave ways to intense but now it's a stricter form of meditation. And again, scripture was no longer sacred. It's quite different from the Vipassana or the Vedanta traditions here. You see nature of one obedience. Find what's hidden behind personality, ego, and so forth. Look the truth beyond words and action. So without my explanation about the cat story, you have no clue. Alright? So same. So that's just empty the cup, fill with option. Remember I told you the cups, the story that the master pour the cup of tea. We have that one, but here. So the direct experience of the truth. Emphasize experience over speculation. You have direct experience. You have to be here and now. Insight can be expressed in words, not beyond. This is beyond the expression, through the experience only. That's what we call Koan here. It's so important that. So that's why sometimes it's focused on here and now. But sometimes, depend upon the skill of the Zen master, they would give out the Koan according to the needs of the student. Okay, here I told you that the term northern, and that means the right school, the right enlightenment school. And southern is start from Huinang edition, seventh enlightenment school. Because it is talk about the conflict between them, and this is one here. I just showed you. One is an opposite way. One is attached to the body, attached to mind. You have to clean up the mind, but another one, you just recognize us. That's there. That's there with you. Your hidden nature is there. The sin nature is there. You don't need to seek for. It's there with you. The Buddha nature or the compassionate nature with you all the times. You need to wait until. Okay, again, this is okay. Compiled in the platform sutra, it's a pleasure. Some of you respond to the seated meditation, right? Right, the platform sutra is so important. Here the what you call the Buddhist. So you see that the fifth paragraph, the Mahayana, and this one here, Linji and Koan. Eventually, at first they spread out what they call five houses of Zen, but up to now, the most famous one that still survive are the Linji or Rinjai in Japanese, and Koan, Soto in Japanese. So that's the most important thing. that relationship with Zen master disciple is so close that they need to guide the student to use certain type of Koan, and basically they just work and do meditation. Even they have to sit in meditation to keep that Koan throughout the days. And that's called Zazen. How anyone you have been in Contemplative yet? Not yet, right? Okay. I say my students from other classes, Introduction Buddhism and Asian tradition. Some of them went to the Zen Center in Houston. You're so blessed that you have many Zen centers. If you miss, some of you missed the first one, right? The first meditation program, so just go there and see how they practice there. Authorities for my disciple is a strength too, right? This help the student to understand and keep up with that Koan and the practice. And anyone can practice. And later on, Zen spread in the culture. Let me. I think you may like it. Let me see. Okay. You recognize him? You recognize him?
Steve Jobs?
Have you watched any video clips about him? What's it about him?
What's about? Like he's the founder and creator of Apple products. And
But his background was?
oh, that he was like some genius who like had like a Fulbright scholarship but dropped out of college to pursue his dream, and like very dedicated and committed, and to a fault actually. He was very hard to work with apparently because he was just a perfectionist.
What else? About his spiritual life. What else?
He was very private about that.
Really?
Very private. About
Yes.
He took LSD, and that's what
Of
gave
course.
him the vision, like the future, I guess, and that's why he created Apple.
Okay, let's watch briefly about this. I think maybe it's longer, but we may shorter.
The Zen of Steve Jobs is a graphic novella. It's a story that reimagines a part of Steve Jobs' life when he was fired from Apple in the early mid-80s.
It's a dark period of his life that isn't, shiny and awesome. And it's also, I think, interesting to find out what he went through, but also how he dealt with it.
He turned to Buddhism, which he had familiarized himself with both in high school and college. He also turned back to an old friend that he had met over a decade earlier, a Zen Buddhist priest, Koban Shino Adagawa. Koban was himself a designer and a calligrapher. The two of them spent a lot of time together, and they became really good friends.
The more we found out about their relationship, the more the book took shape as a novel about that relationship. The book really looks at that period of life and how that study of Zen influenced both his coming back to Apple and the huge success the company had. A lot of those ideas of simplicity, sophistication, beauty, control, we think came out of that Zen period.
So the way that we kind of thought about this period in Steve Jobs' life was kind of like the lost years. It is not only the moment where he is the hero and goes away, comes back, and does these triumphant things, but it's also a period of his life that we maybe haven't seen.
The vast majority of the reporting I did while writing the Zen of Steve Jobs was with Zen Buddhists, a lot of them priests now, all of whom had either studied under Koban or sat with Steve. It was talking to them about the public relationship between Steve and Koban, about how Koban taught, what Koban's worldview was, what his strengths were. It was getting tapes and speeches Koban had done in the past.
A lot of the book is actually verbatim the speeches that Steve Jobs gave, keynotes, when he debuted the iPad or the iPod. But the rest of it is all made up.
Other than the fact that we know that Steve had goals to learn about design and that Koban had the capacity to teach him, and we know what Steve took away from that in the end. We don't know how that transpired exactly. Any scene where you see Steve and Koan interacting is what we call a reimagining, where we take all of the background facts that we have and put them into this narrative that we know loosely tells the story of their relationship and friendship.
I think that's part of the charm, though, is telling the story that had basically happened in private, and doing the best job with our creative license to make it a story that would be entertaining.
So the book is told in a very stripped down style. We took inspiration from the idea of calligraphy in Zen. It's very quick.
Okay, anyway, look around. Our laptop and cell phone with Apple now, right? Even this is expensive, more than PC. Why is that?
They're good.
It's good.
The product is the best. It's the best.
Really?
Yeah.
And yes, I have one too. And actually, before we had PC, right? We concerned about virus, spyware. It's just waste of time, is it right?
Yeah.
It's waste of energy. You have to download the software, Monotone, McAfee, and so forth. But now we don't need that. Even this is expensive. But again, he think out the box. I haven't applied the Zen idea here. I think most of you have been at the Apple store, right? It's quite different.
Yes.
At first, when I went to the store, I think here in Houston, the way they design the store is just so inspiring, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
So you could feel the nature of life.
You talking about
white.
the glass one?
Yeah.
Oh, the one you buy a gallery?
The gallery.
Yeah, that was nice.
You could feel that. You could feel the sense of modern age. You can say that, right? You can feel the warmness. You can feel anyway. So somehow it's more successful. So because we apply this kind of Zen approach, that you need to go beyond the normal thinking. Anyway, I just want to show you so that, I don't know, you may be inventors or whatever, whichever way in your life. In which way? I don't know. Okay, so there's a lot. And here I just show you, I want to show you briefly before we end today, what they call Hua Tou. It's one of the Hua Tou is what they call the sentence before the thinking. Hua is in the language, Tou means the head. It's in Chinese. And so they say Hua Tou. This is the thinking, or the word before thinking. What's that? What's your words before your thinking?
Inspiration?
You can say that. Your feeling.
Your feeling.
Yes,
like what fuels you to say.
Yeah. Your intuition. Remember, I told you when you walk into the room to take a test, use intuition. Right? You use your direct experience, direct understanding, knowledge about the subject that you studying, instead of worrying about the word and so forth. So that's why it's what they call Hua Tou. Why is that? Who is repeat the Buddha names and who drag these cups around? Same, it's similar. But I think if you understand the story I told you, all of them come back the same. Talk about the nature. Who is dragging this cup around who? Actually, in Zen tradition, right? We say that this body is like a corpse. Who is? Who is dragging this cup around? Who is that? We. But who are we?
The corpse.
The corpse? But who? Who after we pass away, we done with our life. So, and who we are now? That's us come back to this, to the what they call the ultimate question. That right? Who are we? Who are we? Where we? How could we end? How could we come here and where we headed to? That is what we call ultimate questions. Again, it's similar to the question, right? What was your face before you were born? This one too. Your nature, your pure nature, good nature, compassion nature, it go with us from time to time, from lifetime to lifetimes. It's within ourselves there. That's one. But before, in the past, the master is not supposed to explain for them. Only for the student to recognize by themselves through their experience. Okay? Alright, so let's finish up today. And if you have to finish your reading time along the way. Alright, thank you.